Hey everybody, that's right. It's time for another edition of Conquer the Cave. Your host Doa here along with Charmer and ready to bring you another best of three between two epic players from our Ice Cave Radio Discord. That's right. These are players from our Discord. We thought it'd be fun to do a King of the Hill style show to see who can conquer the cave and kind of hold on to that crown week to week. We did our first match, Charmer. It was a pretty quick one. Between Kira and Grand Inquisitor, and unfortunately Grand Inquisitor Double Aggression not working out too well, but Otsomatic is back, our Kira player, playing something different this week. We'll get into that now, but what do you think? What are you looking forward to today?
I am looking forward to great games, and I suspect that it's going to be a little bit different from the last time, or at least I'm hoping.
I think it will be.
I think that now that the first one has been completed, folks have seen, hey, this is how it works. This is what's to be expected. I think people are going to tighten up both their play, also some of their deck choices, and we're going to see some real meta contenders. And I'm also hoping to see within that experimentation as well. I think one of the most exciting things is when you take something that's kind of known and established, but you put your own twist or spin on it. And so I'm kind of hoping that we see a little of that today as well.
Well, let's find out. Let's check out our deck list. We're going to try things a little bit different here today. We're going to look at the deck list in advance. Of course, we had the list. We told you about that last time, but this time we're going to let you see them before we get into the game. So here is our current reigning champion, the current conqueror of the cave, Otsomatic. Today is decided to bring Ray Blue, Ray Vigilance. So double Vigilance Ray. Going to be a lot of healing, going to be a lot of defensive play, right? But and I guess when I say defensive, I mean the healing. In terms of what this deck does, it can put out a lot of damage, can't it?
Yeah, this is a list that can absolutely put out a lot of damage, but it can also survive incredibly well. Double Blu-ray is a list that I've personally experimented quite a bit with, actually. I find it to be very enticing and very great in certain matchups. I'm waiting to see what the second list is going to be. I do also want to point something out, though. One of the reasons that I was attracted to Double Blu-ray is because when I built my original list, I had built it in such a way that Kuil always drawed you a card, right? I do see here in the main deck, though, there are some misses, so I'm curious if that's going to come back as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
The force throw in particular is very, very spicy to me.
The force throw is super interesting, right? Because it costs 3 in this list, obviously, which doesn't make it that expensive. But, you know, what are you going to do? I guess you could throw a redemption at somebody. You could throw a Chewbacca at somebody if you really wanted to blow up something big. But I always wonder, do you need that kind of removal in double blue where you already have access to things like Fell the Dragon Takedown, Rivals Fall? Both of those are in there. The other things are in the sideboard. You know, we've got stuff like Tech as well, which I think is kind of interesting because when I think of Ray Blue, I think of a deck that sticks things on the board and then makes sure they do not leave, right? So needing Tech to dive into your resources, I don't know. Like I am not a double Vigilance Ray Blue player, but how do you feel about the Tech inclusion? Is that standard with this list?
So I included it in my sideboard because it is something that I think that you want when you go into control matchups.
That's
one
fair.
of the neat, tricky things that you can do with a tech is if you draw one early and it's a bit clunky, you can actually resource your vigilances to protect them from being discarded or milled and then use tech to bring them back. There's some weird, interesting interactions there. The thing about it, though, like I said, is I was trying to focus on Kuil always drawing a card, and Tech, while still a very powerful card overall, doesn't offer a lot of your defensive capability. It is just a 2/5 if you're not playing any of the smuggle options, and so I had opted to only bring him in for the games that I expected to go long. Also, kind of thinking back to what you were saying regarding Force Throw and how you have so much other removal. I do think that it is sometimes very beneficial to have effective removal options. The one that I opted for when I was deck building was Mystic Reflection because it's still force dependent, but, and especially this is important for the mirrors, it does still get rid of the village protectors. That is an incredible card in this matchup, but if you don't have an answer for it, it's going to be a problem. And so I was opting for things that I knew would get rid of that I'm just very excited to see if this force throw is also intended to throw your own cards or just used on your opponent as a key discard.
Yeah, I mean, if you find the right turn, it might work out. Let's take a look at the opponent's deck as well, because that is going to be, a big component of how we're going to approach this match. It's going to be another Ray. That's right. We have Ray Aggression coming in from our challenger, Talus, and running Tarkin Town as well, which I feel like you do see a lot with Ray Aggression. You do want to be able to just finish off a unit there. And again, with the high amount of healing in Ray, you're a little bit less vulnerable because of running that 25 health base. So on surface level, what do you think of our Ray Aggression list here?
So this is a lot more in line with what I would expect when you think about a Ray list that wants to run force throw.
Yes.
Right? You want to force your opponent to discard cards. We also see 3 copies in the main deck of Pillage here as well. You do also have K2SO. Obviously, in aggressive lists, very common to use that for the damage, but I do see this as potentially being the kind of list where instead you might also opt to make them discard a card and then maybe catch the last card in their hand with a cheap force throw in the following action, something like that. I really like this. I also love the main deck inclusion of the Fang Fighters as well, and I think that's going to be really important in this mirror because both of these decks are running the lightsaber, which is an incredibly powerful early turn play. Even just dropping it on something like an R2D2 can swing a board state.
Yeah, I run Fang Fighters, at least 2 in the main, in every deck I play with Aggression now. I think it's just too good in the meta right now to not have that upgrade removal when you need it, and it's always a 3-1 or a 3-2 rather, which isn't a bad thing to throw in space anyway, even if it does cost 3, right? But I'm ready to get into the games. How about you?
Yeah, I want to see how this goes because you have 2 decks that are very similar and yet wildly different.
Yeah.
And I want to see how they navigate it.
All right, well, let's see if our reigning champion, Automatic, can hold on to the cave or if Talus is going to kick him out. Let's get into game number 1 here. Obviously, on the left side, we have our Ray Vigilance player in Automatic, and on the right, we have our challenger, Talus, coming in with the Ray Aggression. I like the virtual fist bump here as we get ready to get going. I also like that Darksaber playmat, by the way. That is one of the few ones where I'm like, maybe I got to pick that one up.
Yeah, I think we need to give some special love to Automatic with this kind of Renaissance portrait, if you will, or a recreation of the Last Supper, but with Star Wars characters. I really adore that one.
That's right. You'll notice on the left side here, talking about our play space here, we've got the challenger will have a crown on the head of their leader in the leader portrait there. We've decided to add that there. Players getting ready, resourcing their first 2 resources. Looks like Talus has decided. Looks like Automatic has decided as well. And I believe Talus is on the play here, so we'll see what it ends up being. It's going to be that Green Squadron A-Wing to start things up. One of the OG classic best turn 1s in Aggression.
It's a fantastic opening play, and it's even more devastating when you have a Ray list because it can be buffed up to, twice from her hero ability, which takes it potentially up to a 3/5, 5/5 when attacking, and then you can continue to buff it with other options as well. I believe that was a restored arc that was played in response by Automatic. There is a bit of a glare there, but if you missed it, or perhaps you're just listening to this, it was a restored arc.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, looks like we've got a little bit of a glare on the screen there. Now as they exhaust, or they ready rather, we can see that again. And again, shout out to the people on our Discord taking the time to kind of create webcam setups. I know some of the players in our Discord have they've learned how to use OBS, they've learned how to connect everything just to participate in this, and I really appreciate the effort that's going in with that because it's fun to watch these games, right? So looks like it's going to be the 3 damage from the Green Squadron A-Wing coming in.
That is very surprising and perhaps very telling of what Talus intends to do.
Yeah, right.
As far as the strategy, because you have an open value trade into the restored arc there. And if you do so, then you're going to survive. You get rid of their presence. But instead, by opting to go with damage on the base, not only do you leave it up, but it could potentially be buffed if there is leftover resources.
Ooh, that's a huge one right there.
Yeah. So now you can't get rid of the restored arc until you go through the Sentinel. And that is potentially problematic because it's going to continue to restore.
That's right, yeah. So now the Concord Dawn Interceptor is that 1/4 Sentinel that becomes the 3/4 Sentinel when it's attacked. is going to do a good job of protecting that restored Arc 170. We do have the XP from Ray being given to the Sabine Wren on the ground. And just to kind of state too, it's kind of been established that ground is right side, space is left side. When you're playing webcam games like this and you have to turn the screens around and rotate them to get them to fit in this format, you're going to have mismatches side to side. So if you're curious why the space and ground are mismatched, that's why. It's because of webcam tournament. We got to rotate things to make it work. So a little bit, it's a little bit off-putting, but you'll get used to it. I don't find it that difficult to watch personally. I don't know about you, Charmer.
So this is the second time I've seen Talus do this, and I just want to point this out because I have been personally trying to figure out a great way to manage this issue myself, and this is such an elegant solution. I don't know why I didn't think of it. When Talus puts his hand on the table, meaning his hand of cards, he's putting a marker on them so that he knows these are my hand as opposed to resources.
Yeah.
I have found in my games, especially games where I'm running a lot of smuggle cards, it feels like every time I go to put my hand down and I start moving resources around, at some point somebody will be like, hey, what's your hand and what's not? So having a marker like that is actually so simple and elegant, and I just really appreciate that he is doing that in this particular matchup. It makes it easy for us watching.
That's right. I gotta catch up on the life totals here. So 3 right now for Otsomatic. I believe it's 2 for Talus rather. In terms of base damage, XP from Ray going over to maybe the restored Arc 170. Or does it go on the Concord Dawn Interceptors? I say why not? Because now that's just going to be even more power when something attacks into it. Gives you a little bit more attacking power as well. Yoda hitting the board for Talus over on the right side of your screen at the moment. Going back to what you were talking about with me, I always just put my hand kind of like face down in a sort of kitty corner fashion, like up by one of the units or something. I just like put it back up out of the way because otherwise I was getting mixed up and I'm like, all right, I just got to set my hand far away,
Yeah, so Otsomatic did just restore 1 and got some additional damage in on Talus along the way. I'm very surprised that the experience token went on the Mandalorian ship. While it does provide some additional defense to your Sentinel, one of the things that stands out to me is that the A-Wing, if it attacks in and then Talus decides to use Tarkin Town, it will still clear it.
Sure.
We are also going to see a force throw utilized here.
There it is. And I mean, to be fair, I guess the Concord Dawn Interceptors survived that force throw because of the XP. I thought, maybe it was a situation where, you're trying to get it above takedown range as well. Obviously, that's not happening, but it is interesting here. It looks like Tarkin Town's going to be used, though, to finish off those Concord Dawn Interceptors. And I wonder if we're going to see the Green Squadron A-Wing run into the restored Arc 170. No, it's just going to go to base, just keeping up the aggression there. And I believe that puts him up to 5 damage. It's hard to say because the dice have a glare on them, too. They're shiny dice. So we're doing the best we can here.
Yeah, this tells me that Talus knows that he is the aggressor in this matchup. Yes, running the aggression aspect, so you might think that naturally, but
yeah.
In this particular matchup, both decks are capable of generating a lot of pressure, just in the form of you play something with high health that you can continue to buff with your Ray, and as long as you're swinging every turn, that chip damage will add up very, very quickly. The absolute disrespect for this arc is still kind of shocking to me, though, because
I agree. Yeah,
it can continue to restore, and so yeah, you're attacking the base, but you're only netting 2 damage every time that gets to restore. So it makes me wonder if there's another answer or some other option.
Well, there's a vigilance being played by Otsomatic too, so that's going to take out the Sabine, it looks like, and then it's just going to heal him right back to full health on the base. And this is the danger of that vigilance Ray, is that there's just so much healing in it.
Yeah, there is a lot of healing available, not just on the units with Restore, but with cards like Vigilance. And when you factor in that you've got 3 Vigilances potentially that you have to play through, it's almost like your opponent is starting at 45 health.
Right.
It is a slog.
Yeah, so speaking of a slog, we got the health being restored on the Talus side as well, as Yoda swings in for 2 damage. That's going to heal 2 there, and then Green Squadron A-Wing with another 3 to bring Otsomatic back up to 5. And it looks like, yeah, the restored Arc 170 is actually going to go into the Green Squadron A-Wing, I believe I saw.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great play in my opinion, because Talus was opting to not use the raid and go offensively into the arc and clear it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when automatic buffs the arc once and swings, it only takes 1 damage back. And now you have full control of the space arena
Yeah.
until Talus either gets rid of this arc that he's been avoiding doing, or he starts to establish his own space units again in the future. And the longer this goes, I think the more it favors automatic as far as the space arena, simply because when we were looking at those deck lists, this is something that runs multiple copies of Redemption as well.
Right. Now, going into our next resource turn, I believe we're going into 6 resources now. So this is when the rays are going to start flipping. This is when the leaders are going to start hitting the field. And we've still got, fairly low base damage for both sides. Although Talus, with that Cassian Andor being played from his resources via Smuggle, was able to get that 3 surprise damage in there on the automatic. So Talus still ends up with a little bit of a lead, but it's like you said, Charmer, I'm worried about the longer this game goes, the better it's going to be for our Ray Vigilance player.
I think one of the things we're going to watch on this turn to really gauge what Talus's game plan is whether or not these ground units also continue to go to base, or if this was all set up. And the fact that Yoda is likely swinging here tells me it might still just be aggression. My train of thought was about to be that it's possible Talus realized early that he kind of had to abandon space and set up priority as far as ground presence goes, because when either of these players deploy Ray, you want to have an answer.
Definitely.
And the easiest way to have an answer is to make sure you're the one with ground units, so that even if you only attack in with one, getting her down to within takedown range is a pretty big deal. I suspect that this might be why Cassian is being held back.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, you've got Cassian able to do, half of Rey's initial health, before she starts to buff herself, give herself that 1 XP token that she can from the attack. But then that Obi-Wan Kenobi landing to give the Sentinel on the side of Talus, and that's actually going to really make things difficult as far as what you just said, Charmer. Handling that Rey is going to be much harder now that there's an Obi-Wan to go through. And you know what? Cassian Andor, that flick, I wonder if that just went to base? It looks like it may have. Yeah, it did just go to base. Now that's going to get... The funny thing is that would get healed right up by Rey, but now he's got to worry about attacking that Rey right into an Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I think that Talus was saying, I'm going to leave this Cassian back, and I'm going to see whether or not you have an immediate response for, say, my own Obi-Wan or something like that, right? But because 4 resources were already spent on Kanan, yeah, this Rey is going to have to swing into the Obi-Wan, but we'll be taking 4 back. And so if Talus can take initiative, he has the option to potentially just clear that Rey to start.
Oh, absolutely.
Or could just deploy his own Rey, continue to pressure while restoring along the way. This might be kind of the opening that Talus was looking for, where he's just going to stockpile his presence on the ground and overrun automatic in that arena.
Yeah, I think this is the smart choice here, just trading your Rey into their Rey. You get to keep yours with 3 damage on it, but now that Rey, again, is still behind an Obi-Wan, and that Obi-Wan is going to be able to buff the Rey when it does get taken out at some point either. So Automatic really needs to find some single target removal that works on leaders here.
One of the things that is a potential avenue as well is when the Obi-Wan dies, you could put the tokens on Yoda potentially.
Yeah,
allowing yourself to have kind of a split threat. Rey's already somewhat naturally resilient just because she's a leader. So outside of something like takedown, a lot of your stuff very specifically says non-leader. When you're playing against blue, you expect something like Rivals Fall, but we know that Rivals Fall is only in the sideboard of automatic because we got to look at that list earlier.
Fair enough.
And if you spread it out and you know that as the blue player, they're going to have single target removal, having threats that allow you to go wide can be a pretty big deal. Now we're going to see an Obi-Wan on the other side now.
Yeah, and I mean, Obi-Wan plus Kanan is a pretty potent board on the other side for Automatic here. I mean, he was facing down like a minimum of 12 damage potentially coming in from Talus this turn on the ground, but Obi-Wan is going to stuff that pretty handily. And, of course, you've got the healing and the discard power that Kanan brings aboard too. So this game was starting to look like it was swinging in Talus's favor. Maybe he has an answer in hand. It's always a little bit risky to drop 6 resources on something like an Obi-Wan Kenobi when your opponent has full resources, but we'll see what Talus has in mind. It's going to attack that Cassian Andor into the Obi-Wan to start things off, it looks like.
Yeah, and I like this because the Cassian will survive this initial.
Right.
And you're also still not kind of tipping your hand as far as where this Kanan, you know, could be potentially going. At this stage, we know it has to go into the opposing Obi-Wan. Kanan will survive that exchange, but then you'll have the opportunity to distribute your experience points wherever you kind of need to.
Right.
I would favor Rey at that point. So if Kanan does make the attack here, I would favor putting them on Rey just because Rey would be able to survive the exchange into the opposing Obi-Wan at that point. But then even further, Rey could buff your Yoda. You'd still have a legitimate target for her trigger.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that that restored Arc 170 is still alive at this
Still
point.
there.
As I was catching up with the life totals, I was like, wait a second, that thing is still there. The A-Wing could have killed it so long ago, but it didn't. And now it's probably going to live for the rest of the game. Oh, maybe not as Luke comes in, but I think that's going to be targeted to the Obi-Wan. It will. Luke Skywalker hitting the board, giving Obi-Wan that -3/-3 in this case, because there weren't any units lost over on Talus' side, but -3/-3 is all he needed. It's a big Kanan Jarrus, but that's still a scary board on the side of Talus.
I would like to point out that one of the potential options here was to use that Luke to clear out the restored arc.
Fair.
Which would have
Fair
freed
enough.
up space. And in doing, now this sounds funny on the one hand, like we keep bringing it up because it's funny, it's still alive. But in doing so, what it also would have done was forced that Kanan to attack in before it had the experience buffs.
Yeah.
So instead now we have this Obi-Wan.
Right. Did I miss some of the healing there? I might have, because he's only got one dice on his thing right now. Is that 5? It's so hard to read with the it was kind of impossible to read with the glare there.
Yeah, so it should be I believe 5 now because of the Kanan trigger.
Kanan just healed 2. Yeah. Restored Arc healed 1 this turn. So it should be 5-5. Well, what can you say? Glares are something we're going to have to deal with here and there. We're doing the best we can. But, you know, the thing is on Talus' side, though, like, I think you're fine keeping that restored Arc 170 alive right now. The main thing is to clear the way for all of your ground units to get their damage in there, especially the Rey. The Yoda's now swinging for 4. Talus is just basically going for, you know, the kill in the next turn or two here. You know, you're going in. You can, I guess you can trade with that Kanan, but I'm actually even a little, well, okay, I'm half surprised. I'll say I'm half surprised because on the one hand, you've got the units to just pressure a ton of damage if you claim initiative, right? On the other hand, you know, you could just say, hey, you know what? I can just control the board at this point. Without being able to see what's in the hands, it's a little bit tough to say exactly what the right call is there. But I think the nice thing for Talus is that you can kind of look at it either way.
Yeah, and so with that Rey attack to close things out, I believe that second die means Automatic is at 8 damage on base now.
I believe so, yep.
And
Rey
they
should hit
are
for 3. Yeah.
Yep, and then Talus should be down to 2 because of the restore 3 from the Rey.
Yep, well, that side's
we
easy
are
to see.
resetting. Yeah,
That's
well,
right.
just in case somebody has us open, but they are not actively watching with their eyes, maybe they're listening. I wanted to
Oh, sure.
give the update for them. I like to be a fully accommodating caster, and with that, here comes
Wow.
a Fell the Dragon for Luke.
That's an accommodating draw for Automatic as he's able to get rid of the biggest threat on the side of Talus. And it's going to be a pillage. Oh, boy. And I think there's only 2 cards in the hand of Automatic there. The Redemption goes, and there goes Restored Arc 170. Oh, still 1 left.
I was going to say
You
there
have
were
3.
3.
Okay.
He asked him cards in hand, and that's why we saw Automatic put them on the table. He spread it out to show there was 3.
Sure, sure. Well, it's a good time to do a pillage, though, because now, you know, you leave Automatic with, you know, essentially 1 more card that's possible to be played this turn. Is it something that can fit into 4 resources? It's a Vigilance. It is.
Yeah.
So that's a big one to hold on to.
Well, this also forced the hand because when we were looking at the deck lists, one of the things I had mentioned is that you can play the pillage, and then if they don't immediately respect the follow-up, you might also get a last card out with something like a force throw, right? So I think
Yeah,
Automatic kept that knowing it was the only thing he could play afterwards to not get caught with 0 options.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, maybe the redemption would have been nice to have in the air. I think it certainly would have been, but the danger is just too real. If you've seen one force throw, you know there's probably going to be more. One more damage thrown in onto Talus's base there. And, you know, it looks like, I believe it should be actually 2 on the side of Automatic, because he went down to 3 because of the Vigilance and healed another because of the restored Arc 170. So it should be a 2 health on base right now for Automatic, 3 for Talus. This game has been very long, but still, 5 total damage between the bases right now at 8 resources. It's Ray versus Ray.
I am stunned by the longevity of this arc that has been
Right?
on the table since turn 1.
It's a little Arc 170 that
played
could.
it and said this will just never die. Is secretly Wedge piloting that thing, I swear.
Yeah, apparently so. Although, what's going on here? Okay, so we have the K2SO getting played. That's going to be scary to deal with.
And again, with the life totals kind of, you know, measured here, nobody's close to death. This might be one of those situations where, depending on the sequence, the K2SO does end up triggering a discard. Because we have seen a desire by Talus to kind of punish the hand of Automatic, but Luke is a great way to start things off. Nothing has died, though, so...
Right, that's the thing. I mean, sure, it makes Ray do less damage, or K2SO do less damage. Yeah, he's going to nerf the K2SO's damage, -3, -3. But it doesn't kill anything. You got that Luke out, and I mean... there isn't enough on the ground for Talus to swing back into the Luke and take it out. But the funny thing is that he can actually buff the K2SO because it's been -3, -3. So Ray actually gets to put an XP on that now, which is actually hilarious. 3 more damage on the base, up to 5 total for Automatic. That's something I guess I haven't seen before. That's a new one for me. That is so funny, actually.
Wow, So I think what Automatic had done is they had resourced 1 card and they were feeling that pressure of, I don't want to have this go away. And also, we know Talus isn't going to kill that arc anytime soon, so waiting for that thing to die to get a Luke trigger is just wishing upon a star at that point. So I think he just played the Luke before it could get forced out of hand, which makes sense, but it certainly created an awkward moment, and now Talus is going to clean that up with a Rival's Fall.
Yeah, wow. Talk about, you know, Luke in your favor, actually. Oh, no, and there is another, I believe, is that... Wait, why am I blanking on that one?
Should be a Keep Fighting.
That's right, Keep Fighting. That's why I didn't recognize it. I haven't seen that card in a little while. He's going to use it to actually ready Ray again, which is, you know, a great card to have in this deck. Another 3 health done to your opponent's base. Another 3 health healed off of yours. That's going to bring Talus down to 0 damage on base.
And because K2SO was only a 2/2 at the time, it was another buff to the K2SO with an experience token.
This game is getting a little bit ridiculous.
Keep Fighting is something you traditionally see in like a Sith Inquisitor list, but it does make sense in Ray. I think it's one of the reasons why the aggression Rays have been a bit popular, because of plays like this. On Ray, it allows you to buff your other units, get more damage in, and potentially serves as healing along the way. Not that Talus really needed it at this stage, but it's a very versatile card in this list. And on the other side, we are going to see a Kuil hit the board, which could be traded into right away if Talus wanted to. That might be Automatic, maybe even baiting, saying, hey, if he kills this, I'm not taking damage.
Yeah, did he maybe draw another Luke or something like that? All right, Redemption hitting the board now for Talus. And he doesn't even need to heal. That is just a massive 6/9 Sentinel in the air now for our Aggression Ray. You know, for Automatic, we know he runs 2 tech main boards. So I feel like that's just what you're holding out for now. You're just holding out for a tech, putting some extra resources down. You know, that's why we see him drawing 1 and resourcing 1 each turn, so that when he does finally theoretically get that tech, you can play 1 or 2 cards from the resources, maybe. But it's looking a little bit grim here for Automatic right now, for a reigning champion. Up to 11 damage on base. We've reached 3 dice. No, we've reached 4 dice with the K2SO swinging in for 6 as well. 17 now, and it's starting to slip away a little bit on the automatic side here in game one.
One of the interesting bits is that in this particular matchup, I feel like tech is also potentially a burden. Automatic has played 2 Vigilances, but neither one of them were used for the discard cards from deck portion. It was always destroying a unit and then also healing. And so even if Automatic was able to stabilize the board state, being behind on health, if you start using tech, you're also milling yourself. You're discarding more cards essentially from your deck. So you could actually put yourself into a situation where you're running out of cards before your opponent, which is just wild to think about, because normally when you think about any double blue deck running Vigilance, they are the ones who use that as a secondary win condition. But Automatic is, I think, a little bit behind with the deck count at the moment.
Yeah. Now, there was some healing that came in on the Automatic side. I believe that was a Restore 2 from Kawil as you ran into the Obi-Wan. But yeah, I mean, what do you, at this point, Automatic, like, you need a super laser blast or something now, man. I don't know. You need to dig deep and playoff aspect, summon that card from the abyss somehow.
I think Kawil just has Restore 1.
I believe he does. Yeah, that is correct.
1.
Yeah. Yep. Never mind. That is correct. Kawil's Restore 1. So it should be 14 then on the side of Automatic. You know, funny enough, I mentioned Super Laser Blast. He actually is running 2 in the sideboard. Because if this game goes long enough.
We did see those.
Yeah. And that's going to be, is that going to be out? That looks like it's just going to be a concede here in game number 1. Automatic saying, you know what? There's not a way I'm going to come back with this. And I can't blame him. I think that is a situation where that's going to be a game going to our challenger, Talus, just putting on too much pressure for too long. And Automatic, I feel like he had opportunities here and there, but just couldn't win the fight on board. All right, we are back for game number 2 between our reigning champion here on Conquer the Cave, Automatic, taking on Talus, our challenger, on the Ray aggression, and getting that aggression in game 1, Charmer. It ended up just being too big of a board for Automatic to handle. It's going to be the same start we saw in game number 1, just reverse order here. Arc 170 on the Automatic side, the Green Squadron A-Wing on the Talus side. The question is, do you think Talus is going to let this restored Arc 170 live this time?
I do. I have no reason to think that they would change course if the first time it resulted in a victory. It is entirely possible to win and still make mistakes along the way. And I also would like to say I don't say that to imply that game 1 was a mistake. I'm simply saying that when you tend to have good opening results, you don't shift your game plan very often.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, this time he doesn't really need to worry about it. He can be the aggressor with those Concord Dawn interceptors coming down on his side of things. That is going to be something that, with the XP on it, will not take out the restored Arc 170 if it attacks into it, but it is enough to give Automatic pause and maybe not attack. Maybe just kind of wait this one out. Maybe you want to take 2 turns to trade, I suppose. Either way, it's great for Talus. Gets able to get in pretty much scot-free with that Green Squadron A-Wing attack. 3 damage coming in on base.
Yeah, the one downside to this opener, if you could even call it that, is that you go 2 straight turns without being able to activate your hero, and your deck is kind of built around your hero. But when you have arguably the best 2-drop in the game, if not certainly one of the best ones in space, followed up with an outstanding Sentinel to protect it, I think you let that slide.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, your leader ability is great. I mean, you do center your deck building around it a lot of times, but there are exceptions. There are cards that are worth playing and skipping it. Concord Dawn Interceptors, man, easily one of the best cards in set 2, if not, you know, the whole game.
And with that in mind, players are going to resource turn 4.
That's right.
Talus has the initiative here, and I was about to say, I think we're just going to see more damage on base, just in case there is a targeted removal option on the side of Automatic.
Yeah, I think you got to do it, right? And we do see that trade that we were talking about too, where it takes 2 swings, but The Arc 170 does take out the Concord Dawn interceptors, does restore 2, but that's still 4 total damage done by this Green Squadron A-Wing right now, and that's not bad at all. Yoda comes in for 3. That leaves a resource available for the Ray's ability this time. Kanan, meanwhile, on the other side for Automatic.
All right. So with Kanan coming down, I would expect Talus to activate Ray and potentially protect the Yoda. There is also an argument to be made that maybe you just jam it on the A-Wing and continue to race in the air now that you have full complete control over the space arena. But instead we're gonna go with the force throw.
Wow.
And
yeah,
hits the opposing player, does have a Yoda on the board, so that 3 damage will go to Kanan.
Guess what? That also lets him use Tarkin Town to take out Kanan Jarrus as well. And, you know, I really love the way that Force Throw operates in this deck, you know, because of reasons like this, right? Where he knew that it didn't matter what was discarded from his opponent's hand. He knew any amount of damage would probably, you know, barring one, it would be enough to take out that Kanan Jarrus. And, you know, knowing what's in those Ray decks, the averages are in your favor for sure to make that play.
I was just about to say, technically a 1 doesn't get it done. And what's funny is we know, unless they were sideboarded out, but we know that Force Throw is in Automatic's list. So it would have been pretty comical if Force Throw discarded another Force Throw.
Or an R2-D2, you know, sure. There was a couple options there, but like I said, the odds were in his favor, and it panned out that time around. Looks like Tech is going to be the play for Automatic this time around. Obviously useful at getting your smuggle cards back from your resources, but, you know, it's also just a 3-5 on the board, too.
Well, it's a 2-5.
Oh, 2-5, you're right.
Which is part of the reason that they run it, because it can be targeted by Ray if necessary.
Correct.
And we're going to see a Cassian. This one was smuggled in, so it's going to cost the 4.
5.
I was gonna say, excuse me, 5.
We're both getting numbers wrong, man. It's been a long day. We missed our naps.
Well, I saw, though, there was only 4 on, and I saw the 4 resources on the board, and I was like mid saying it. I'm like, man, I thought that was 5, but I see 4. But he was in the process of doing the swap, so.
That's right. So it's gonna be, I believe, 12 total damage on the side of Automatic now, as the Yoda and Cassian Andor do attack in, along with the Green Squadron A-Wing this time, for a pretty meaty total of 8 damage on the Blue Rays side of things as we reset and go into resource turn 5.
Well, it should be 6 now, because again, I was just thrown off by
you're right.
Cassian. They had 5, so it should be 6 now.
I give up on numbers. I'm done. I'm done with numbers forever after this game. That's or basic counting skills, never learned them.
But with that in mind, this is resource turn 6, and it's really important because obviously the Rays can hit the table, but it's also really important because if Automatic wants to stabilize, kind of needs some juice on this turn. Now, could be something as simple as a Vigilance, where perhaps you still destroy a unit and you gain a bunch of health, or I like Obi-Wan. I suspect Talus also has some expensive cards over there as well, or situational ones. And the reason I say that is because, there's a matching Obi-Wan. I was about to say, I suspect that because we saw the Cassian smuggled in for 5, which usually means that you don't have a lot of other great plays on that turn. So it's either your stuff costs more than 5, or you're holding cards to respond to something else.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, the 3 damage is always nice too, especially when you have a pretty open board to throw it in on like he did last turn. And now we just got the double Obi-Wan. The super Obi-Wan bros coming in, and it looks like Tech's just gonna swing into Obi-Wan. You kind of have to. That's gonna be 3 damage on the Sentinel on that side, but I'm very curious to see how this is gonna play out, because Talus, you know, obviously has the units to clear this Obi-Wan and just, you know, again, end the turn with a bigger board. But the fact that both Rays are going to flip this turn is going to complicate things, and there are both Rays flipping actions for Automatic. Then Talus now back to Automatic right now for his post Ray flip action. Is it going to just be running into the Obi-Wan here?
I mean, it has to be. You don't have any other options. It would be
initiative is the only other option. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I think it would be a bit of a mistake to flip your Ray and leave it out to dry. If you're not going to send it, you want to at least get that restore 3, given how much damage you've already taken.
It feels bad.
The problem
though.
is I was gonna say, the problem is the moment you do that, you're gonna lose your Ray just like you did in game 1. And I do really feel like that was when the game turned in Talus's favor. But if you
Sure.
just leave her there, you also, like, she'll survive, but you also are not in a better position because you're still going to have to deal with the Obi-Wan the following turn.
Well, you know what's funny is since they both have Obi-Wan out, this Rey has to attack into that Obi-Wan, so that Obi-Wan's gonna die. Do you think the XP is gonna go onto Rey? I feel like it has to. Yeah, it looks like that's where it's gonna go. I was gonna be
Well,
surprised if it
on
ended
this
up on the
side, there's
tech.
another option.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like theoretically there is another option, but like there's no other option. If it goes on the tech, then I would suggest that Automatic get a brain scan.
Yeah. I mean,
You need
it's
Rey.
exactly. It felt like that was basically about it. Looks like there was another 5 damage. I believe it was done total on the side of Automatic, which should take us up to 17. Let me tell you, it's difficult doing life counters in real time.
Well, on top of that, you've got damage going up, damage going down,
Yep, exactly.
damage going
yeah.
side to side.
See, Talus is making it easy for me by just not taking damage this game. That's you know, I appreciate that a lot, you know.
Yeah.
But it looks like, from what I know, we're at or around 17 on the Automatic side. Perhaps. No, it's 17. Yeah, because it's 2 6s and a 5. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna have a Luke come down.
Right.
And this is, even without something dying, enough to get rid of the opposing Rey.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a great way to start. You want to have your Rey out there nice and healthy, able to hopefully peel some more damage off of your base, make it harder for your opponent to get rid of it. However, now that the resources have kind of evened up and readied up, Talus does have the option to Rivals Fall that Rey if he's got it in hand.
Certainly does. I think it's smart here to attack in with the Obi-Wan. First off, just because you know that's going to get taken out at some point, you might as well just get in there with the 4 damage while you can. Be the aggressor. Take your opponent up to 21 damage on base. And then kind of, you know, play out your removal from there, right? It's a scary board for Talus to deal with, but you still do have sort of the aggression edge, I suppose, where you've got the units that can't be stopped on board. That A-Wing is going to do a little bit more.
Yeah, maybe. So hear me out. I think that if Talus had a Rival's Fall, it still would have been a snap play there. Yes, you want to get the damage with the Obi-Wan, but in my estimation, if you get rid of the Rey with your Rival's Fall and you prevent the healing of 3, it's only a difference of 1, but you know that your opponent has no other options for the rest of the turn because they have used all of their resources, right? So I feel like if there was a Rival's Fall, that probably still would have been the option. I think instead what we're going to see is just more aggression and then using these resources to play 1 to 2 more units so that Automatic has essentially no way to claw back next turn no matter what they do.
Yeah. That was another 3 to base from Andor, I believe. So we're still.
All right, so we're going to have
21.
Yoda for 4.
Yeah. So that should put us at 25 then. On the base of Automatic, add in another 328 damage. It's getting scary. And there's going to be a keep fighting. It's going to bring the A-Wing back up, and that's going to be enough damage to close at Talus with that keep fighting. Ends up doing a total of 31, ending the game in 2-0 fashion, toppling, or I should say kicking out the Conqueror of the Cave. We got a new Conqueror here. It's going to be Talus. Automatic, congrats on your 1 win. But it's time for a new champion to take over. Now the question is, Charmer, how long would Talus be able to hold on to the throne?
That is a great question. Thus far, we've only had 1 winner, and they were immediately dethroned. So
yeah,
if Talus can survive for even just 1 week, they will be the record holder. There's a lot of incentive there. You want to be a record-setting Conqueror of the Cave.
Yep.
You just got to win.
That's true. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, at this point, you know, you get the special Discord role if you're the current Conqueror of the Cave. We're going to add in more prizing as we can over time here. But it's exciting to see, you know, I think two two more meta inclined decks than we saw, last week. Obviously the Cura is, but the Grand Inquisitor was kind of out of left field a little bit. It was fun to watch, but this was an interesting one because it was a 2-0, but it feels like that Vigilance Ray was like this close a lot of times from being able to sort of swing the board back in their favor. It's an interesting matchup. I don't think I've actually ever seen that one played out before. And I think if we played that one like another 5 times, it would end up being 3-3. It'd be fairly even. What do you think? Do you feel like the Aggression Ray has the edge, or do you feel like it's pretty 50-50? In my mind, it comes down to the pilots a lot in this one specifically, but
I think that it comes down to pilots, to answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
However, what's interesting to me about this particular matchup is the keep fighting felt incredibly important both times. Not only did it seal the win, but in game 1, when it was utilized on Ray to essentially heal an extra 3, get additional damage in, and get that extra counter on the K2SO who has Overwhelm, and then when he resets to his natural values on the following turn, you had a 6/6 Overwhelm that also had a really strong when defeated ability. That felt really pivotal as far as I was concerned in locking down game 1.
Yeah.
So I would normally say it's even matched, but that inclusion of keep fighting and the expert usage of it by Talus makes me feel like the aggression list might have a bit of an edge, just because it's such an efficient way to kind of surprise your opponent.
Yeah, it's a tough call for me to say because, we had like Luke in a big Ray out on the other side for Automatic that last game, right? And I mean, it didn't seem like there was a big answer. If that keep fighting hadn't been there, suddenly like he's healing for 6 every turn and the game, goes very differently. So I don't know. I want to see that matchup more. Not right away, but in the future, I want to see that matchup more and see how that plays out, because that is an interesting one. And it's just that's one of the reasons I love this game, right? Because you've got the same leader, but you've got the different aspects on the bases, which results in different enough play styles to really like have something for you to puzzle out as a player and as a commentator in this case. So it's just a ton of fun to cast this game. I love it. But
go
ahead.
I was going to say, with that in mind, I just wanted to congratulate Talus on a well-played victory. They are now the conqueror of the cave, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if they stick with that list or if they bring something else next week.
Yeah, that's right. That's always the option, right? You don't need to play the same list every week. If you are the conqueror of the cave, you can swap it up. We saw Automatic go from Cura to Ray this time around. Will Talus stay on that aggression Ray? It seemed powerful. It seemed like they really knew what they were doing as far as piloting the list goes. So we'll have to wait and see until next week. But on that front, thanks again for our players for showing us some awesome games. Thanks to our Discord out there for being such a great community. This is for you, and for anyone else out there, of course, watching online. We hope you enjoy it as well. But first and foremost, this is for the Ice Cave Radio Discord crew. You're great. There's almost 500 of you now, which is totally awesome. If you're not in the Discord and you're listening to this, definitely go to icecaveradio.com. The link to the Discord is in there. There's so much great deck discussion and life discussion, everything going on in there every day. And then we've got, of course, our merch store and our Patreon as well. If you like what we're doing and you want to help us out and help us be in a position to make more of this, because we enjoy that. So thanks for all the support. Thanks for watching. Any final words before we finish this one off, Charmer?
Oh man, I don't have the voice ready to go.
Oh, that's okay.
So.
It's not the podcast, so we don't need it this time. But
I guess my final words are not words at all, but it's going to be a little insight. If you've made it to this part of the video, if you're all the way at the end of Conquering the Cave number 2, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Whenever we film Ice Cave and we get to the part where we cut to the cave pole, we go, we just cut out us making the noise. So that's my final words.
There you go. It's kind of Wampa-esque, kind of Wookiee-esque as well. Kind of just, whatever our creature is, our totally non-IP infringing ice creature in nondescript ice cave. Don't read into it too much. All right, we'll see you next time on Conquer the Cave, everybody. Thanks for watching. Take care.